Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Dwarka. The mythical city of Dwarka has been detailed in legends for at least 9,000 years. It's supposedly the greatest city in the world of Hinduism, founded by none other than Krishna himself. Even the name of the city, Dwarka, translates to gateway to heaven. In both the myths and the Mahabharata, which is the primary sacred Hindu text, the city is described as a place of wonder. It's said that it had many beautiful palaces constructed out of pure crystal and silver and decorated with shining emeralds. There were giant artificial lakes, roads leading through the city, and massive residential areas. However, it's a little hard to believe that such a city could have existed in India 9,000 years ago, long before even the Sumerian civilization of Mesopotamia came around. The truth is that even though archaeologists did indeed find the remains of a sunken city off the coast of the modern city of Dwarka, they probably aren't more than 3,000 or 3,500 years old. Still, pretty old. The ruins were uncovered in the Gulf of Cambay, suggesting there was a city there submerged by some kind of cataclysmic event. However, the stones haven't technically been dated. Researchers have only dated artifacts, things like ceramic ware that had been found in the sediment. These artifacts showed the city going back to around 900 BC. Experts believe it was still a holy city, but probably not built by an actual Hindu god. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Number 9. Lost Town of Mardale. There is a lost village, a tiny hamlet only visible when the water level drops, hidden underneath the Haweswater Reservoir in England. It's the town of Mardale, which was submerged back in the 1930s when the water level of the reservoir was artificially raised by about 95 feet. The reservoir has been used to serve Manchester and the surrounding area for the last 90 years. But back in the 30s, the villagers were pretty unhappy to be kicked out of their homes. Hundreds of villagers were forcibly evicted in order to make way for the area to flood. Most of their houses were blown apart by Royal Engineers, who used the structures for demolition practice. What was once a beautiful and picturesque town remains completely hidden most of the time. However, the ruins of Mardale Village can be seen when the water level in the reservoir drops any lower than 50%. But you'd really have to look hard to realize you were staring at a lost city. The buildings have been ultimately destroyed, with the only evidence of human habitation being the squat foundations that remain of the buildings. You can see the outlines of the structures long destroyed, but that is all that is left. Number 8. Sunken City of Tiquina. Underneath the surface of Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, archaeologist Christophe Delaire of Belgium discovered the remains of an ancient civilization. With information given to him by the locals, he and his team have so far discovered over 24 submerged archaeological sites, hiding underneath the shimmering blue water of the lake. The most important of these sites, at least according to the Bolivian government, is Santiago de Ojelaya. This is where the government is hoping to build a museum both on land and in the water. That way tourists can see the ruins both at the edge of the lake and the ruins beneath the lake. Pretty cool, huh? The ruins once belonged to the pre-Inca civilization known as the Tiwanaku. The Tiwanaku began settling around Lake Titicaca in 2000 BC and continued to thrive there for 3,000 years. They reached their height around the year 500, with shocking advances in architecture and science. They built gateways that some believe were used as portals to other places in time and space. They also crafted amazing artifacts from gold and spread across the Andes Mountains into Argentina, Peru, and even Chile. But they always stuck quite close to Lake Titicaca, where they believed civilization originated. It was part of their mythology that the first human had risen from the lake, and so it only made sense to keep it as their political and cultural center. The sunken cities and temples found beneath the lake likely were flooded when its water levels rose about 1,000 years ago, right around the time the Tiwanaku vanished. Number 7. The Kekova Ruins. Kekova Island in Turkey was home to the very first democratic federation in the world. This was before the Ottoman, the Byzantine, and even the Roman empires. It was around 2000 BC when the Lycians created the first peaceful federation of city-states the world had ever known. The Lycians were a happy and prosperous people, and they built a city on Kekova Island specifically for trading at sea. It was called Simena, and it lasted for about 2,200 years before it was hit by a series of earthquakes in the 2nd century AD and sunk. It really did happen that fast. The people of Simena had enjoyed centuries of prosperous trading and had been building a beautiful city on the island. Then the ground shook and all their great works of architecture fell into the water. But the city is at least still visible today. The shattered rooftops of ancient structures looking almost like the crests of coral reefs in the clear waters of the Mediterranean. There's a broken shipyard here, the foundations of old public houses, and scattered pieces of pottery on the sea floor. There are also Lycian tombs scattered throughout the area, both underwater and on the island. There's even one particularly striking set of stone stairs descending straight into the water, where the city had once been. The entire island today is completely abandoned. There is not a single person living here, and only a handful of goats who reside in the above-ground ruins. The whole place is a protected area, a UNESCO candidate, and a forbidden zone. You're not even allowed to dive or snorkel in the area around the sunken city without express permission from the authorities. In 2017, the Turkish government thought to potentially open the ruins for exploration to draw in tourism. Would you make the journey to visit this underwater sunken city? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6. Dunwich by the Sea. Dunwich was a thriving port city in the 13th century with a somewhat legendary status. In fact, Dunwich remains a city on Suffolk's coast in the UK. Quite tiny today, there are only about 200 people living in it, a single road, one pub, the ruins of a monastery, and a local museum. But in the Middle Ages, Dunwich was quite a bit larger. It was actually huge, with a bustling port getting fat on fishing and trading. There was even a Greyfriars monastery established by Franciscan monks in the 1250s. The town was getting bigger and bigger, and it was spreading from the beach higher up the shore. But no amount of prosperity could save Dunwich from what came next. In the year 1286, a massive storm battered the English coastline, sweeping away the newly constructed monastery and literally sucking people's houses into the ocean. When the storm had settled and the people were able to look at the damage, they saw that their city was entirely gone. It's now sitting underneath the water, about half a mile from the coastline. Starting in the 1960s, fishermen began to catch their nets on mysterious structures underneath the water. When archaeologists went in to see what was going on, they laid eyes on Dunwich's shattered churches for the first time in over 700 years. Which city do you think is next to be swept out to sea, and how soon do you think it could happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 5. The wickedest city. Port Royal was once called the wickedest city in the world, yet it's hard to see that when looking at Port Royal today. It's a small and rather sleepy fishing village in Jamaica, located just at the mouth of Kingston Harbor. But in the 17th century, Port Royal was the very real pirate capital of the Caribbean. It was a paradise for pirates, a port city of bars and brothels where scurvy-stricken sea dogs could indulge in all kinds of sins and vices. In the 1660s, historian Charles Leslie wrote that wine and women drained pirates of their accumulated bounty so quickly that some were reduced to beggars in a single night. Pirates used their booty to purchase mass quantities of wine and take women back to their pirate lairs. Alas, the glory of Port Royal did not last as long as the pirates would have liked. It was on June 7, 1692, that an earthquake shook the Caribbean to its core. The quake was so ferocious that it caused a tsunami that came out of the water and dragged Port Royal into the sea. Roughly 2,000 people were killed, and the entire city was sunk in a matter of minutes. All these years later, the ruins are still out there, just a few feet below the surface. Number 4. A prehistoric ghost town. The English Channel is one of the most difficult places for diving. It's a huge stretch of water between the island of Great Britain and mainland Europe. It has powerful tides and extremely cold waters that make it hazardous even for the most professional divers. For these reasons, it's been difficult for marine archaeologists to reach the bottom of the seabed and see what's hiding there. Why would anyone want to go to the bottom of the channel? Because 8,000 years ago, there was no water here. The United Kingdom was still linked to Europe by a large patch of land. It wasn't until the glaciers began melting that the sea levels rose enough to turn the UK into an island. Back when this was still above water, people actually lived here. There were settlements throughout the entire region. As the water started moving in, people were forced either east or west. Some people settled in Britain, some people in France. In the 1990s, the first ever evidence of these prehistoric settlements was discovered by divers carrying out routine surveys. They noticed a lobster cleaning out its burrow, moving pieces of worked flint out of the sediment. Over the last 20 years, several different expeditions have gone to the bottom of the channel in search of lost settlements. And while they haven't found any towering cities under the water, they have found evidence of towns and villages. Most recently, the Maritime Archaeological Trust used new technology to scan the bottom of the channel, finding old pieces of timber and layers of wooden foundations, the ruins of prehistoric towns. We don't know how many are down there in the dark, and most of whatever the prehistoric people built is long gone. However, there are still vague traces of homes sitting on the bottom of the English Channel, all of them over 8,000 years old. Number 3. Phanagoria. Phanagoria was once the biggest ancient Greek city situated on the Taman peninsula, a major emporium for the traffic moving between the Maeotian marshes and the southern region of the Caucasus. For those of you unfamiliar with the region, it's in the western part of Russia on the edge of the Black Sea. The city was originally founded in 543 by colonists fleeing devastation at the hands of Persia's Cyrus the Great. After a series of wars and shifts in power, the town allied with the Roman Republic. Since they had remained loyal to Rome, when the Romans began to take over the area, the people of Phanagoria were allowed to maintain themselves with a greater level of autonomy than most other conquered cities. They remained a powerful player in the region up until the 4th century AD, when the Roman Empire fell and the Huns burned the city to the ground. In the Middle Ages, the town bounced back after being utterly decimated by barbarians. It became the capital of Old Great Bulgaria in 632, then was absorbed into the Byzantine Empire. By the 10th century, it was invaded by the Rus, and this time never bounced back. Even though much of the ancient city lies in ruins on the edge of the Black Sea, a large part of it is also in ruins underneath the Black Sea. About 1/3 of the city has fallen victim to rising water levels, with a huge portion of its ancient temples and buildings submerged under several feet of water. Number 2. Olus. Olus was yet another coastal city in ancient Greece that flourished because of its easy access to trade networks. It was a city positioned smartly at a maritime crossroads, which connected northern Crete with other Aegean islands in the Mediterranean. Like so many other coastal cities in Greece, Olus was plunged into the water when a great earthquake shook the region in the 2nd century AD, yet not all its history was lost. Recent underwater surveys have revealed the remains of broken structures, roads winding across the seabed, and the foundations of huge public buildings. Archaeologists have found defensive walls and towers, which likely protected the harbor city from invasion by the sea. They have also found ancient coins dating back to 330 BC, coins decorated with the heads of gods like Zeus. What's really remarkable about Olus is that the whole thing ended up being underwater. There are sunken cemeteries, marble statues buried under sediment, and even ancient tombs that are pretty much inaccessible because they are so deep underwater. Number 1. Fabbriche di Carregine. Fabbriche di Carregine isn't exactly Atlantis, but it's still one of the most mysterious lost sunken cities in the world. It's a submerged town from the medieval days, hidden beneath the water of Lago di Vagli in Tuscany. The lake is an artificial body of water, the result of flooding in 1953 when a dam was built nearby. Creating the dam meant the whole valley was going to need to be flooded, which would completely destroy the city that had been standing there since the 1200s. It was actually pretty tragic, especially from a historical standpoint. The original town had been thriving for over 800 years. Whereas many of these small Italian settlements vanished in the wake of the modern world, this one survived deep into the 20th century. Even more fascinating is that the town was occupied mainly by blacksmiths and farmers. They still practiced many old ways of life, with the 146 inhabitants farming the land, building, and surviving as if they were still living in the Middle Ages. But the flood destroyed their way of life. As the basin slowly filled, the village was lost under the water. It's still down there, and it occasionally rears its medieval head when water levels drop, but it's never going to be inhabited ever again. Thanks for watching! Which of these incredible sunken cities would you love to explore on a scuba trip? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more incredible finds. Bye!